Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted that you could join us for Lesley's annual Evelyn M. Finnegan Children's Literature Lecture. It was Evelyn's gift of her extensive collection of children's literature to our library that spurred the creation in 2012 of the lecture series that carries her name. As this is the first Finnegan lecture following Evelyn's passing last September at age 94, what better way to celebrate her life than to have our 2021 speaker also be a Lesley graduate. Candice Iloh, who earned an MFA in our creative writing program for young people, is here tonight. Welcome, Candice. We're so glad to have you back with us. There are 69 years separating Evelyn, who is the class of 48, and Candice, the class of 2017, but they share a talent and a love of writing for young readers. Evelyn herself was the author of 6 children's books, and she supported other aspiring writers by funding a creative writing scholarship here at Lesley. In fact, it was during her time here at Lesley, where she majored in early childhood education, that she began her lifelong study and love of children's literature. It was also during her time in college that she met her future husband, Paul, who was her brother's roommate at Harvard. So Evelyn's time in Cambridge clearly had a profound effect on her life. Evelyn and Paul settled in Scituate, where Evelyn taught first grade in the public schools and later started a preschool in her home, following in our founder, Edith Lesley's footsteps. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with our history, Edith Lesley started a kindergarten in her family house on Everett Street in Cambridge, just after the turn of the last century, and began tutoring fellow kindergarten teachers. Her teacher training programs eventually grew into a college, and then, of course, into a university that continues to be a leader in education and teacher training. While raising her children, Evelyn volunteered as a storyteller in the town's library and hosted Children's Story Hour on the local cable channel. She ultimately became the children's librarian in the Scituate Public Library, and now the children's wing there is dedicated to her and her husband. Like 2 other women authors of her generation, Beverly Cleary and Joan Walsh Angland, both of whom recently passed away, Evelyn Finnegan drew her own life experiences in her writing, helping children to see themselves in her stories and to feel heard. I couldn't help but think and be struck by the parallels. Beverly Cleary was also a librarian who listened to children and listened to children who wanted to understand how their story fit. She has inspired countless children to love reading and books because it was her lifelong passion. She truly embodies Lesley's mission to educate people who will make a positive difference in their communities. I'm so pleased tonight that Peter Finnegan, one of Evelyn's 2 sons, can be with us to talk about his mother's love of children's literature and what this annual lecture series at Lesley meant to her. Welcome, Peter. I'd love to hand you the Zoom stage.
Thank you, President Steinmayer. Am I on? Hello?
You're on.
Great. Thank you very much, President Steinmayer. It's good to see you and hear your comments. Thank you very much. On behalf of my mother, Evelyn, and the entire Finnegan family, I am delighted to participate in the first ever virtual Evelyn M. Finnegan Endowment Lecture. As we know, my mother was a proud graduate in 1948, and she was very active in her class. She loved what Lesley had to offer, whether it be in the classroom, various clubs, or exploring Cambridge with her friends. The skills she learned at Lesley provided the foundation for her to become the very best elementary school teacher, children's librarian, and author. Throughout the various stops along the way, she was able to capture the attention and imagination of those she interacted with. especially children. Lesley truly held a special place for her. My mother looked forward to these lectures because it allowed her the chance to stay close to her beloved alma mater and be with those who shared her love of writing books and understood the importance of how books can positively influence children. I recall one lecture at Lesley where she proudly presented her book, My Little Friend Goes to a Baseball Game, with the accompanying sweater and secret pocket for the little friend. That ability to capture the attention and imagination of the audience was on full display. My mother really enjoyed that moment, just as she would love to be here with us tonight to celebrate with Candice. And Candice, being an alumna is a good thing too. So congratulations, Candice. And now let me turn the microphone back to President Steinmayer.
Thank you, Peter. We're so very grateful for your family's participation in our community and the support over the many years. Your mother's legacy is very much alive at Lesley. What a wonderful role model she is for all of us. And now I have the honor of introducing Tracey Baptiste, one of the most celebrated faculty in our MFA in Creative Writing program. Tracey is another school teacher turned author who writes for younger readers. She's the author of the novel Minecraft, The Crash, which debuted at number 5 on the New York Times bestseller list in 2018. The Jumbies, her Caribbean-inspired young adult series, stories which she calls creepies, have been named Junior Library Guild selections and have received multiple publishing accolades. She has written numerous nonfiction books for young adults on topics ranging from Nelson Mandela and Al Gore to ancient Egypt and overcoming prejudice. Coming soon are books on musician Bob Marley and his family and historical figures in African history. Tracey is a gifted and versatile storyteller across genres and cultures, and she brings those talents to her work with students at Lesley. We are so fortunate to have Tracey Baptiste as a Lesley faculty member, and we're glad she is with us tonight to introduce her former creative writing student, Candice Iloh. Tracey, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, President Steinmayer. I am thrilled to be here to introduce Candice. I'm going to tell you a little story. When I started teaching at Lesley University in the low residency creative writing program, it was winter 2016, and Candice was one of my very first students. It was my first time teaching at the university level. I was used to second graders, university students, not that different. But I was really grateful that my first couple of students were smart, good writers, and already had that sense of community and camaraderie that buoys you up through a long career as an artist. Candice stood out from the other students in that she knew her art. She knew what she wanted it to be, and she understood where it was lacking. It's a difficult thing to know yourself as an artist, to know your trajectory and know where there are gaps in your knowledge and actively work toward maintaining your path and directing your own education. But beyond that, I was very fortunate that Candice knew the thing that I'm always trying to get students to understand. She knew the thing that she could write that nobody else could. I'm forever trying to get students to understand what it is about themselves that is unique and particular, something they can add to the artistic landscape that wouldn't exist if they weren't there. It is perhaps the hardest thing to understand about being an artist, but Candice already understood this. So naturally, you expect that we had a perfect mentor-mentee relationship. It wasn't. But the secret is, it never is. Learning is uncomfortable. And as a teacher, my goal is not a student's comfort. My goal is getting them where they want to go. And that looks different student to student. So some of the things Candice and I worked on made her uneasy at times, a fact she made me aware of during our time together. But I think in the long run, that discomfort helped, at least in some small way, to get her to where she wanted to go with this particular story. It has been quite a thrill for me to see Ada's story go from workshopped manuscript to one-woman show to National Book Award finalist. Here are a few things to note about Candice Iloh, among many incredible things about her. Candice is a performing artist, a dancer, a poet, a teacher. She has performed with Nikki Giovanni, studied under the poets Ruth Foreman and Kathy Park Hong. Ada on Stage, the one-woman show Candice performed in 2018, opened to a sold-out audience. I know, I was there. Her debut novel in verse, Everybody Looking, was longlisted for the National Book Award before it even hit shelves. And it was incredible that somebody straight out the gate became a book award finalist. As a dancer, I am particularly interested in Candice's ideas about using the body to guide storytelling. So I think we are in for a wonderful presentation tonight. Finnegan lecture attendees, I give you Candice Iloh.
Good evening, everyone. I thought that Tracey was going to tell the full story about our first experience, but I'm glad that she brought it up because it is largely connected to what I'm presenting on tonight. So I want to jump right into my presentation so that you can experience it rather than me telling you about it. So I'm going to share the screen and begin. All right, good evening. My name is Candice Iloh. I am a Black, queer, non-binary writer and performer that is driven by feeling. At the age of 18, I began learning how to access my feelings through the body in therapy. And to do this, I had to begin unpacking childhood memories. After my first year of therapy, I wrote my first poem in college, and I unlocked a lot of the stories, or most of a big chunk of the stories that I wanted to start telling and shaping. 9 years after that, I began writing Everybody Looking. So tonight, what I want to focus on is what I feel like is my specialty, or the thing that I like to do in my work, which is using my own body to operate as a guidance system for storytelling. And tonight I'm going to use it, or I'm going to illustrate that using Everybody Looking, a few of the passages that really stuck with me and that are really important to me. I am going to be using those as an example of how to do this. So what I mean when I call the body a guidance system is that I believe the body holds things long after our brains forget, which is why we can still experience trigger feelings long after our minds have moved on from a moment. These feelings offer us intelligences that, if observed carefully, can teach us a lot about how we see the world and how we respond to it. I believe this understanding is at the core of authentic character development and character-driven plot. And to explore this, we're going to be looking at the following things. So first, we're going to look at memory. Then we're going to look at using that memory to walk through our imagination. Then we're going to look at takeaways. And then we're going to look at the motivation behind a main character or a very important character in the story. And first, I wanted to just add a little bit more to the story that Tracey began. My time at Lesley was very, I would say just like a roller coaster, because every semester was different. Even though we were able to choose our advisors, everything that we were about to do each semester was largely determined by, you know, like where we wanted our own work to go. And so I remember in particular, my first time working with Tracey. Tracey had us, we were doing like our workshop. So the Lesley MFA program is low residency, meaning we only saw each other twice a year. And in those times, that's when we had our seminars, we had our workshops, we had like lectures, we had all of our social engagement. And so a big part of that was the workshop, where we would bring some pages that everybody had read already, and they had given us notes about like the things that worked really well, and then the things that they didn't understand or they thought didn't work really well. And I remember in particular, when we were workshopping, everybody looking with Tracey for the first time, um, everybody had gone around in the circle and had like done the standard workshop experience, where you hear from everybody, and then you hear from everybody again. For my particular experience, Tracey wanted us to role play, and I had to imagine myself as a 6-year-old again for the parts where I was trying to shape a character who's really young and who is connected to the same character who we see at an older age in the book. And, you know, needless to say, it's really, really, really hard to do that when it's like a sensitive subject. So like a 6-year-old being like in a therapist's office is really touchy, and you have no idea what's going to come up when you're pretending to be that small child who's scared, confused, doesn't know where they are. And I remember having a really hard time with that and talking to Tracey about it afterwards. But like down the line in my revising of the book and thinking about how I wanted this character at different ages to feel, role playing was excellent, because I really did have to remember what it's like to be a 6-year-old in confusing settings, and settings that are unfamiliar and that no one has explained. And so we're going to be doing a little bit of embodiment in this lecture tonight. And so I am going to have us prepare a little bit. So I just want you for a moment to just take a deep breath at your own pace. And when you're ready, I want you to take another one. And when you do it this time, I want you to to inhale, hold it a little bit. And then when you exhale, try to just clear out. Like imagine yourself exhaling as if you're letting go of everything that might be in your chest or in your mind or on your heart. All right, so we're gonna move on. All right, so for our first step, we are going to engage our own personal memory. All right, so I want you to, wherever you're at, whether it be in your house, in the bathroom, in your bedroom, your living room, wherever you're watching this, listening to this, I want you to recall a personal first memory. When I'm working with high schoolers, young people in general, I oftentimes refer to this as a defining moment. So you're choosing a memory that was significant. For this memory, though, I want you to create some distance and see yourself as a character that you've created. Okay, so this is an opportunity for you to take yourself out of that memory, whether you chose something that was really awesome, that felt really good, or something that maybe was negative or disturbing. I want you for this exercise to plug yourself out and plug just a figure, a character, someone that is not you in. I'm going to give you a few seconds to think of what that memory would be. All right, so now we're going to move into expanding that with our imaginations. So now you're going to visualize yourself, meaning that character, having the experience, and ask, what happened to or around them? So what was the moment that they were experiencing or the moment that they were witnessing? Secondly, what sensations did they feel? What sensations did the character feel? So when we're thinking about sensations, we're thinking about maybe our physical, our skin, how our skin feels, how the air feels around us, maybe a taste that is in our mouth, maybe a scent, maybe a sound. Right now I can hear birds outside of my window. I can also hear somebody walking down the hallway in my apartment building. I can also feel the chair under my body. I can also feel my feet on top of a carpet. And hold on to those things. And everybody looking, Ada has an experience, a first experience at a megachurch, in which she says, and I can't see the top of the screen right now. Give me 1 second. This is what happens when you share the screen. You can't see everything. So I'm going to go straight to the book and read it directly from the book. She says, "It's clear we'll stay here, watching Dad take in the plush burgundy seats, at least 100 rows of brown skin cloaked in tailored dress, clapping perfectly, manicured hands jumping and stomping their feet under the spell of the finest full choir, drums, and most impressive organ. The congregation crying out in unison while the praise team leads song after song. Dad entranced as the pastor nods approvingly from the front row, bobbing his head, one hand resting on the lap of his first lady. The whole flock shines in collective yes. Everyone's best jewelry gleaming, a flood of hands outstretched, each one a sign of surrender, each one a bowed head, a shed tear, or a bended knee." So in this moment, Ada is remembering an experience of seeing how these bodies operate in this particular building. Step 3. Now we're going to think about takeaways. So think about what parts of the memory stuck with you meaning this now character, and ask, what sensations stayed with them, right? So we talked about sensations a few seconds ago. What are the things when you recall this memory that you're using right now? What sensations do you in particular still remember? I can still remember the pear-scented lotion that I used in the 6th grade. When I smell that scent, I am immediately transported back to the 6th grade hallways in middle school. Secondly, how did the experience impact their perspective? So now you're thinking about the experience, whether it was something that the character went through or witnessed. What did it cause the character or you to start to see? How did it cause this character to start to view the world? And everybody looking, one of the first things that Ada starts to question a lot is the things that she heard in church, right? And so in this particular passage, she says, we are on 52. "I had never questioned how the Bible was the word of God. When many of the books were written by men, whose name sounded American. Apparently Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Timothy, James, Peter, Paul are the words of God. Words are powerful unless they're not biblical, unless they're not written by men, unless they're unlike Jesus' spit itself. Why can't I pray outside his name? Why is my name not enough? And then we're gonna flip to 140, right? So hold those specific questions that she's asking. And we're gonna jump to 140, where she says, there are things they tell you get easier with time, that one day you'll grow up and be able to take it all. They say this is what you have to do to be an adult. This is what you have to do to survive. You will not own your body. You will not own your things. You will not own your feelings. You belong to the world, to them, to him. So here we're seeing Ada has internalized some specific perspectives about the world and about what it means to be an adult and what it means to be good in this world. So she's first had an experience where she walks into a mega church and she's viewing it from her 12-year-old eyes, and she's seeing all of these people emotional, they're clapping, they're all in reverence to a figure that she cannot see. And they're also in reverence to a figure that is leading them, that is sitting out in the front. And she starts to internalize certain messages about men, about religion, about power, and also her own body in that space. So step 4, motivation. So first we started out with the experience that the character has had or witnessed. Then we moved into takeaways, things that that basically stayed with the character and then shaped their perspective and made them look at the world in a certain way. And lastly, we look at the motivation that is developed from that. So now you're going to think about what became true about you and or how your behaviors changed after the experience you had or witnessed, and consider, what does the character now believe? Right? So what now does the character believe, having witnessed or experienced something and internalized certain messages? Then what does the character now desire, right? So now we're moving into character motivation. They have an experience, you had an experience, then you received messages or internalized beliefs that came along with it, internalized perspectives that came along with it due to what you felt in your body at that time, right? Maybe you felt small, maybe you felt very hot because you became angry in the moment. Maybe you felt your skin literally felt sticky, right? Because you were sweating. Maybe you were hyperventilating. Maybe you started to breathe too fast. Maybe you felt cold. And later on, that coldness started to feel like we are all alone in this world, right? Going from a physical experience to believing I'm cold. I had this experience when I was younger. I was cold when it was happening. No one was around to comfort me, or I didn't have a coat at the time, so I'm in it by myself, right? Our character develops beliefs based on certain experiences. And because we develop these beliefs based on these experiences, then we start to develop desire, something that is going to propel us from one place to another. And now we're going to take a look at some of the beliefs and the desires that Ada developed as a result of a few of the experiences that she had growing up. So I'm going to flip to Now, page 372. I can't explain what happens to me in the next 20 minutes of class, but maybe I've been possessed by something. Back in my father's church, sometimes everyone would watch someone who they called possessed lie on the ground, twisting and contorting in ways that the body wouldn't if something powerful weren't inside it. The pastor would command the spirit inside the body to leave, would pray to drive the spirit out, and everyone in the sanctuary would pray against the spirit with hands stretched out toward the body, crying out in the name of Jesus that the spirit would be loosed. And sometimes we'd see the body flip over and the person's head whip forth while the eyes roll back. The wild spirit would take over, cry out, fight through. Possession, noun. The state of having, owning, or controlling something, as in, when I forget about the mirrors, the windows, the eyes, looking at me, judging me, telling me what they think I should do, when I forget about the fear of pain, of something coming soon to hurt me, I am in possession of my whole body. My spirit runneth over, it twists, it turns, it cries out. And another experience, we're going to jump to 395. To a random person, a dance studio is nothing but a room with funny floors that kind of spring when you jump on them. Funny floors that sometimes you got to take your shoes off to move on. A random person who's never danced in one before might not understand all these mirrors, all this space, or that these four walls are something more than just a room that bodies make things up in, might not understand counts or how to let the beat guide you, how to let it speak all the words you don't have today. Today it lets me cry in it. For the first time in months in a room all by myself, I don't have to be anything but this. I don't have to explain everything I hear, everything I feel, everything I am is mine. What is something you need to overcome? Who are you dancing for? What is something you need to overcome? Who are you dancing for? Who are you dancing for? Who are you dancing for? Then dance like she's here. She's here, sis. Dance for her, like this is your last chance, like it's the last time. And one more. All right. So I want us to take one more deep breath. And I want to read you something. So, with consideration for the senses and the capabilities your body has access to, I believe your body is the best source and the best place to source your inspiration from because it's one of the most unique things that you possess. It holds a wealth of nuanced ideas that make your perspective special while creating connection. If you want to write something fresh and something new while making the reader feel at home, you have to begin with your own body, right? So I'm not sure what memories that you all jump to when I asked you to grab a memory, but I'm hoping that you were courageous and brave in grabbing a memory that maybe was a little bit uncomfortable, because I believe that that is the best place to start. It is usually the place that we have the most emotion around, we have the most feelings around, we have the most visceral images in our mind that we can start from. And us as writers in particular, writing fiction, even though we're writing fiction, we are trying to depict characters that feel real to the reader. And the realest thing you know is you. So I'm going to stop there. And wait for Tracey.
That was incredible, Candice. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank you for that. That was an amazing way to think through character and an amazing way to look at a unique perspective, because it's something that people would not be able to access, you know, by observation. It really is turning inward to bring something out that is very uniquely that person. So thank you so much for that. It actually, doing it was great, because it unlocked a little thing for me. I know, yes, the student.
It's your turn.
Teacher. And I really hope it unlocks some things for other people. So we're going to turn to Q&A at this point. So if people want to start typing in their questions into the Q&A at the bottom of the screen, or into the chat, I will start looking for those. But I have a couple of questions for Candice before we get started with everybody else's. And the first thing I want to ask is, how are you feeling, first of all?
I really don't know. It's really, I think it feels really strange to be giving a lecture from my home. It doesn't feel like one. It feels, I don't know. I can't even explain what it feels like to be in this like virtual space, giving my very first lecture ever.
Right.
I've been a teacher and educator for over like 10 years at this point. And I really, I've had a lot of teaching experiences that just didn't feel like this. Like I've always taught in person for the most part until this past year, doing a whole bunch of virtual visits and things like that. So I feel strange. And I'm hoping that it resonated with people, because, you know, you can't get feedback on Zoom.
It is very strange, because we do, as writers, we kind of, you know, like we rely on the audience, right? Like as storytellers, we kind of rely on that feedback from the audience. And we're also both dancers, and that's the same, it's very much the same thing. You dance outwardly for the audience to give something back. So in this kind of space where you don't have it, it's hard to know if it was okay. I can tell you it very much resonated with me. You know, I really enjoyed it. I really got into it. So I'm going to say that it resonated with everyone. I'm just gonna be that person. I'm just gonna say it resonated with everyone.
Okay.
Put you at ease. Right there. Okay. So I wanted to ask, you know, so Ada is something, Ada's story is something we worked on at Lesley, and then it went out into the world. And oh, look, so there's some comments that says Renee Watson, of course, is in the audience, and she says, yes, it resonated. Of course, we can always count on Renee.
Renee Watson, oh my God, if it resonated, it was great.
I know. So, you know, the MFA program is kind of this unique bubble, right? You're in this bubble with your cohort, with your mentors, and it can feel a little insular working on something in that kind of space. But then you took this very personal story out into the world, and then it got a lot of praise immediately. And what was that experience like, going from this very insular kind of program out into the world, and then having the story become the splash that it was?
I experienced, I really freaked out right before my book came out. So I was like, oh wow, people are actually gonna read this now. Wow, maybe I shouldn't have done all of that, I don't know. But I mean, it still feels very surreal. It feels surreal to be reminded that people care about art, because I was really set on creating something that I could be proud of, that I felt like was a good piece of art. And you know, this world in lots of ways kind of rewards things that, you know, is not art a lot of times, or things that people have created for money or for personal gain. And so us as creators oftentimes feel like it's just a big risk on the heart to make something that is so personal and then put it out there for people to consume. And it's been interesting to watch how people digest it, because, you know, you as the artist, you know what you meant. And then to hear all these people just say, oh, I felt this, or when this happened, you know, there were people who called the school in the book Howard University, and I never called it Howard, though I really like that they called it Howard. I really like it, but I never did that. And so it's really interesting to see people like insert themselves into a story that came from a really personal place. I don't know, I feel gratitude. I feel gratitude. I really feel like recognition and awards, honestly, I like them because it means that my story is going to go further. It means that more kids are going to have access to it. And so that makes me feel really grateful. And the fear is still there, but not so much, because we know when we write books, once it's out in the world, you have no control over what happens. So you might as well just like let go.
It's good that you are able to let go, because of course that's a hard thing too. It's
Yeah.
hard to just, you know, like put something out and then step back from it, because then it becomes somebody else's story, right? It's
Yeah.
no longer just your story. It belongs now to the readers, and you're not a part of it. Your part is finished.
Yeah.
So that can be hard.
Wild.
The ownership part can be really hard.
It's a lot.
So a lot of people are saying that, you know, there were things that resonated. I see that Celeste Muhammad is here, who is also one of our alumni, all the way from Trinidad. Trinis. So there's another Celeste asking about the relationship between the kind of embodiment that you just walked us through,
Mm-hmm.
and the possibility of healing through writing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how might you talk about that as writing and this particular kind of physical embodiment as healing for a student?
Well, I will say that writing is really therapeutic, but it isn't therapy. It really just brings the things to the surface, and then you see it, and then you see it as something that needs to be dealt with. But I think that, what am I trying to say? As a writer, I personally have to go through embodiment in anything that I'm writing. It's really a personal experience every single time that I am shaping anything. I'm writing another book right now, and it's difficult because I have to think through difficult feelings. This idea that fiction writers are just making it up is really a myth. Like, I don't feel like we're just making it up. Like, we are making up the story, but the people are real. All of the, you know, the places are real. They're things that we've touched and experienced before. And so I feel like it is a heavy undertaking to be a writer, choosing to write anything about human beings because human beings are so complex. And it's like, you think that you start off writing a story, you think you're writing about this, and then by the end you're writing something else. And that is the experience I had with Everybody Looking. You know, like there's you know, history in the book, right? There's some things that I wrote from a very true place, but I started off from a very selfish place, and at the end the story had nothing to do with me. It is I had to really surrender to the process of the story becoming a story. I remember many times where I thought the book was done, and and it was like 175 pages. And I remember you in particular being like, there are no stakes here. Like, why would the reader care about this? Like, like there are all these things that you have to think about, and it's grueling. So I don't know if I'm really answering this question about healing, but I do I do think that when you're writing any story that has depth and you are a character-driven writer who's focused on like this character and what they're going through, it is a journey. It is an up and down kind of thing that you go through that becomes very personal, because you do have to think about what it feels like to you. And what, you know, that's the only way that you can convey it on the page. And so I mean, in short, I would just say you should be doing some other things to take care of yourself when you're writing a story about human beings.
Right. It's, I'm guessing a lot of it is self-discovery, right?
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of, you know, plumbing the depths, as it
Yeah.
were. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let me, hold on. I'm going to go through. So there's some sort of specific questions about the story.
Okay.
And Jenna wants to know, Jenna says, I loved Ada's character, so much growth as the book came to an end. I have so much hope for her. Please speak on her relationship with her mother. She wants to know a little backstory. How did the parents meet or break up? Do you think you can talk about that?
I left those out on purpose. What I really wanted for this story was for people to be viewing all of the experiences happening from a child's view, right? So when you're a child and all these things are happening with your parents, you actually don't have answers to those questions, because 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, parents who are going through that don't know how to talk about it with their kid, or don't know how to break it down in a way that the kid's going to receive it. So I didn't think it was important to highlight what happened to them. I wanted to highlight what she's seeing and what she thinks it means, right? It doesn't matter how hard, you know, like your mom and dad really tried. It's like, this is what a kid sees and internalizes, and then later on as an adult has to work out on their own. So I cannot tell you backstory about that. But what I can say is, in my next books, I go further into parents. Like, that's an obsession of mine. So you will be seeing more of that later on.
Well, we actually do have a couple of questions about what you're working on next. So maybe you can talk about that.
Oh, yeah. So I am, my second novel is called Break This House. It is basically about a young person who learns about the death of an estranged parent on Facebook. And then it's a time travel of her going back to her original home as a child to figure out what happened.
Oh.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh my gosh. Well, that sounds pretty intense. So basically what you're saying is you're never going to write about just like robots or anything.
No, because I just really like feelings, and feelings is where I work from. And I just, you know, it's been an alarming time with social media and the way that we find out things. So like, I'm really kind of obsessed with how young people are getting information.
That's great. We're almost coming to the end of time. So I'm going to ask this one question that I actually really want to know as well. So when you and I were working on the book, it was called Ada, and now it's called Everybody Looking. How did you transition to this new title?
I just knew that it would drive me nuts that no one would pronounce it correctly, including myself. Like the Igbo language is very complex, and if you are not a native speaker, you're most likely not going to pronounce the words correctly, and I was going to have a problem with that. So I just went through this intense process of like looking through all the lines that I really liked in the book, and then just like narrowing it down to the lines that would make a great title.
And so how exactly did you come up with Everybody Looking? Like, does it have something to do with the dancer aspect of it, her observation? Because there's a lot of her observing things, and then the reverse, right? There's a lot of people observing her. So was that the impetus for that particular title?
Oh yeah, I mean, this book is very much so about the gaze. So like just going from a space of being looked at, being observed, being picked apart, being criticized, to moving into a space where you're like in dance studios and now you're observing yourself in mirrors, you're seeing your reflection and you're criticizing yourself, to getting to a space where you're embodying the feeling of creating dance and you no longer have to rely on mirrors. You can feel how good it feels and how you look doesn't matter as much anymore. And how you use your reflection, how you use mirrors is different. And so I had like a whole bunch of lines that I felt like resonated, but that one in particular, I pulled because it is very much so about looking at myself and being looked at.
That's great. Thank you, Candice. Okay, so I am being told it's time for me to close out our evening. So I would like to thank everybody for coming, and especially Candice for this. I think you know, I spoke for everyone when I said it resonated, but I think all of the messages that I am looking at, certainly people did feel very, very connected to the activity that you walked us through. So thank you for that. I'd like to give my thanks to Evelyn Finnegan for her contributions to children's literature, and the Finnegan family for continuing her legacy through Lesley University and facilitating this wonderful lecture year after year. I am particularly grateful that Peter was able to join us tonight. Thank you, President Steinmayer. Thank you to the Planning Committee, Tiara Angus, Michael Lanier, Elizabeth Jolett, Grace Enriquez, Jason Friedman, Betty Ann McKay, Constance Bratos, and Sandra Walker for their work putting this night together. And thank you all for attending. And that is it for us. Good night.